has been officially honored as excellent scholarship.
Just to clarify, so they wrote an article, for if anyone didn't quite follow that, that claimed that you could watch dogs hump in public, and that was evidence for there being a rape culture within humans. So they wrote that article, sent it into a well-respected journal, and I think they got an award for it.
I'm not going to lie to you.
Hey guys, so I've got a different kind of video that I'm gonna do today. Over the last few days, I've got in quite a few debates about the indoctrination of the nation with the radical left's ideologies. I have, over the course of a few days, been insulted many times for being a white, cisgendered, heterosexual male, and none of the times was it relevant. And it leaves a salty taste in your mouth, you know, because it's just not nice. It's racism and sexism, and the people who are doing it might be otherwise nice, kind, reasonable people, but because they've been brainwashed by this ideology that in their mind you can't be racist towards white people, you can't be sexist towards men, or if you are going to say these bad things, then it's justified because they don't accept their privilege, they've internalized privilege, I don't know, you know, this kind of shit. It's real sad to see, and it's not like it bothers me and keeps me up at night or I'm crying into my pillow. It's more like I see the deterioration of so many good people, and also of society as a whole, that I really can't stress how important, or at least I believe how important these things are to be spoken about. And there's currently like a huge left versus right dichotomy going on, and I really want to try and bridge the gap, but at the same time still be real critical of the far left, because it's super easy to be critical of the far right. Yeah, we don't like white supremacy, kudos, well done. We're all on the same page there. But when it comes to the far left, there are genuinely millions of people, including people in positions of power in technology businesses, like in Silicon Valley, like Google, like YouTube, for instance. They've been censoring people, they fire people that disagree with their doctrines in the most ridiculous ways. Look up the James Moore case if you're not aware of it. And then people in political power, for instance, people in the, I think it was the Obama administration quoting that 1 in 5 people get raped on college campuses statistic, which is insanity, absolute insanity. And just to clarify, in the data that they used to get 1 in 5, they counted people that, two people that had consensual but drunk sex. They counted that as the man raping the woman, and a bunch of other ridiculous criteria. So I'm going to be showing you a video that happened, that was presented to the internet as a gift from God about 2 days ago now, and it's called Grievance Studies. And basically what's happened is 3 academics have created some pseudo studies, some intentionally broken studies, they say, and they have given them out to well-revered, respectable in you know, relative to their realm at least, academic journals. And some of the studies they have presented are absolutely hilariously insane. But I'm just gonna, I'll let you see some of it and decide for yourself.
Is the letter here in here? Yeah, I just read my email. We have our first win. The dog park paper has been accepted. They don't know. We're about to tell them. Gotta read you something. Dear Dr. Helen Wilson, I have now closely considered the revisions of your manuscript, Dog Park.
I love how much they laugh at this. It's so good.
And will recommend its publication in Gender, Place, and Culture. You have done very good work to address the issues your viewers raised and clarify your arguments.
Absolute
Thank
heroes.
you for your contribution to Gender, Place, and Culture, and I hope to see your manuscript in print. Yours truly, PhD, Managing Editor. Culture. We have an accepted paper in the #1 feminist geography journal.
Since approximately June of 2017, I, along with two other concerned academics, Peter Bogosian and Helen Pluckrose, have been writing intentionally broken academic papers and submitting them to highly respected journals in fields that study gender, race, sexuality, and similar topics. We did this to expose a political corruption that's taken hold of the university. By this point, several of these papers have been accepted in highly respected journals, and one that claims that dog humping incidents can be taken as evidence of rape culture has been officially honored as excellent scholarship.
Just to clarify, so they wrote an article, for if anyone didn't quite follow that, that claimed that watching that you could watch dogs hump in public, and that was evidence for there being a rape culture within humans. So they wrote that article, sent it into a well-respected journal, and I think they got an award for it.
I'm not going to lie to you. We had a lot of fun with this project.
And it's so good that they have so much fun with this, because if you look at the people that they're kind of like mocking and the people that they're exposing, absolutely humorless people. If you watch their protests, if you watch their talks, there's no fun, there's no joie de vivre in their voice, in the way that they speak and the way that they act towards each other. It's really just hatred and spewing that and calling you out for that, and you need to be ashamed of that. And I think it's a pretty safe rule to be skeptical of people that don't have any humor in their life, you know?
You so worried that we didn't respect the dog's privacy. That's my concern. We respected the dog.
I don't think you can see the subtitles without saying that the reviewers were worried that they couldn't see that they were disrespecting the dog's privacy, and whilst they were looking at the dog's
I
genitals.
believe that we're not addressing a serious problem. If you have a few minutes, I'll try to explain.
Some clips there of
To be
some
clear up
SJW
front, We
riots.
think studying topics
Not
like gender,
one-offs.
race, and sexuality is worthwhile, and getting it right is extremely important. The problem is how these topics are being studied right now. A culture has developed in which only certain conclusions are allowed, like those that make whiteness and masculinity problematic. The fields we're concerned about put social grievances ahead of objective truth. So as a simple summary, we call the problem grievance studies. To test the depth of this problem, my collaborators and I dedicated ourselves to a 1 to 2 year secret project targeting top grievance studies journals.
I was laughing
with an
for
agreement
so
to
long when I
publicly
heard
release
about
our
it.
findings, no matter what the outcome. We started officially on August 16th, 2017,
It's just so
and by
funny.
Thanksgiving we were in trouble. We had begun ambitiously and mostly stupidly. Our first papers were really only suited to test the hypothesis that we
So I'll skip this bit. They first tried to do it just in kind of a haphazard manner, and it didn't work quite so well, and they were a bit worried that their reputations were just ruined for no reason.
Religious architecture in their mind where privilege is sin, privilege is evil, and then they've identified education as the place where it has to be fixed. So you can come up with these really nasty arguments like, let's put white kids in chains on the floor at school as an educational opportunity. And if you frame it in terms of overcoming privilege, and then you frame their resistance, that they won't want this to happen to them, that they would complain about this. If you frame that in terms of, oh, they only complain about that because they're privileged and they can't handle it because their privilege made them weak, then it's right in.
This is exactly an example of, I made a Facebook status about this recently actually, about I heard Brett Weinstein use the phrase hermetically sealed argument, and it means like an argument that's so watertight that no conflicting evidence, nobody else's opinions could ever brush on it because they have an answer for everything or they have a rationalization for everything. I believe that like fundamentalist religious people have very very similar arguments, because every time you say anything, they can just quote the Bible back at you, and you can't discredit the Bible because it's the word of God. I also think dogmatic atheists have the same kind of approach, where everything you say is either beyond ridiculous fantasy and not worth looking into, and not the correct type of evidence. And then if you do present them with, you know, actual scientific evidence that will dismantle some types of their metaphysical beliefs, then I know a lot of people will think I'm speaking shit on this, but I'll make another video on this some other time. Then they say that the sources aren't credible enough and not even worth looking into. And yeah, there are a bunch of other examples I can think of, but this has got to be like one of the purest forms, where if you ever disagree with these SJW types, these far left types, then all you're doing is not acknowledging your privilege. And they use this really like regurgitated phrase, but I'm sorry that you get so defensive when somebody tries to dismantle your privilege. I'm sorry that it offends you when we try and take away the things, and I'm sorry that you have to suffer in the same way that other people have suffered for millennia. And it's just all this such pseudo-logical, intellectual, jacking themselves off to the sound of their own voice bollocks.
With 2 papers accepted and 1 published, it would be fair to say that we had become accepted grievance scholars. By June, it was 3, with 1 having been officially honored by the journal as excellent scholarship. By July, it was 5.
Excellent scholarship.
By August, 7. This shouldn't have been possible.
I think that was a dog one.
So far, what we're learning is rather astonishing, but the data we've gathered require more analysis to fully comprehend. What appears beyond dispute is that making absurd and horrible ideas sufficiently politically fashionable can get them validated at the highest levels of academic grievance studies.
We rewrote a section of Mein Kampf as intersectional feminism, and this journal has accepted it.
Just because they don't really explain this too much, this one is absolutely shocking. Mein Kampf, for anyone that doesn't know, is Hitler's diary, and it's obviously really fucking intense. It's Hitler's diary. So they all they did was get a chapter of it, rewrite some of the really intense terminology that he used, I assume, towards Jewish people or any of the other people that he was discriminating against, and filled in those gaps that they removed the words from with feminist ideology and buzzwords, and then presented that as, you know, a legitimate article to support feminism, and it was accepted. This just goes to show how much of a religion that the far left feminism has begun. And when I've spoken about this, people have said so often, it's like, no, come on, you're overreacting, it's not like this. 90% of feminists aren't like this, you're just focusing on the radicals, like, you know, people do with Islam. It's not. It's really not. I recognize that, okay, the majority of people who call themselves feminists are probably really, really reasonable people, as, you know, probably around the average of a human being, maybe slightly above, because they're going towards what they see as reasonable things. But where all the power and all the sway of these institutions are, and all of these doctrines going into the minds of the generation of, like, you know, my generation, going to the universities, it's spread like wildfire, and that goes up into the companies that hire them, and that goes out into the media, and that goes out into politics, and it has spread so much, so much. I'm not just like sitting there in a tinfoil hat being like, oh guys, they're after me.
This is deeply concerning, because the work of grievance scholars goes on to be taught in classes, to design educational curricula, to be taken up by activists, to influence how media is produced, and to misinform journalists and politicians about the true nature of our cultural realities.
Yeah, see?
No one tolerates this sort of corruption when they find out an industry is funding biased research to make itself look a certain way. The same scrutiny should apply to research when it pushes a political agenda, and we have uncovered enough evidence to suggest that this corruption is pervasive among many disciplines, including women's and gender studies, feminist studies, race studies, sexuality studies, fat studies, queer studies, cultural studies, and so on.
One of the articles I don't think they're going to mention in here is, and I'm not shitting on fat people, I got a lot of love for anyone of any size. I really, really do, and any gender, whatever you are. I got a lot of love for you guys. Like, I'm not trying to shit on it. It's just the culture that seems to be shrouded, like, behind these subjects is just hilarious. And guys, if you're out there and you're scared to laugh at this kind of stuff because it might offend people, don't. never be scared to laugh at something. Like, obviously be tasteful about it. If there's someone in front of you that's getting really upset, like, you know, don't outwardly go and troll people. Don't like go and comment like hateful things like, "Ah, you're all idiots." But like, if you can do it with good intention, where you're not trying to hurt someone, you know, you can look at these kind of things, and it's so funny. One of the studies that they wrote was they put it in fat studies, was that because fat is such like a legitimate human bodily structure, then it should be a category in the Olympics to have fat bodybuilding. It's just, you can't make this shit up. They literally did make it up, and they accepted it.
You may be thinking that the work done in these fields must be good, because it seems to continue the noble work of the civil rights movement. Well, after having spent a year immersed in it and becoming recognized as experts in it, we have to disagree. Grievance Studies does not continue the work of the civil rights movement. It corrupts it, and it trades upon their good names to keep pushing a kind of social snake oil onto a public that keeps getting sicker. Progress is easier without Grievance Studies. My collaborators and I are left-wing academics. And
this is a really repeated point, so it's kind of lost its power. But the reason, like the sentence, the reason why Trump got elected is this, and then pointing at all of these different things, it's still just as true as the first time that someone said it. It is exactly why. And I'm not saying, yo, fuck all Trump supporters. I'm not saying fuck Trump, like whatever. I don't personally think he's a great president, but I don't judge people that do. We've all got our different opinions, and this just happens to be a really heavily emotionally volatile one to speak about. But if you are against Trump, or even if you're not, you can look at these things, and you can easily analyze, if you take a step back and look at it objectively. This is why this is one of the huge reasons why there's so much polarization right now. And yeah, there's been political polarization in America for a while, but not to this extent, and not to the point where anyone that isn't in their category of beliefs is labeled as a horrible person, racist, a sexist, an ableist, a transphobe, whatever. And this causes an outrage, it causes an uproar, and it causes loads of people to say fuck you. We want someone that's gonna say fuck you, because we can't say it without being called a racist. And
now say with confidence,
it's just like,
don't speak for
it's
us.
Such a classic, it's just such a cliche to have arguments that are so aggressively one-sided that you're just alienating the rest of the population. It's amazing that so many smart people, and there are very smart people within these fields that I'm criticizing, so many smart people can't just see that. It's such a cliche. It's a thing that's just like, you hear about it when you're like 15, like, oh, that's why the political parties hate each other. But then they just, I don't know.
It's now a plea to all the progressives and minority groups these people claim to speak for. We suggest you spend some time critically engaging with the ideas coming out of these fields, and decide for yourself whether they speak for you.
And I think that's a really good point to end. And wait, I might be real good at OBS right now. Whoo! Pro. I think that's a real good point to end, is that, yeah, these people claim to be speaking about oppression, and they, you know, I had a huge debate yesterday on Twitter. Loads of people got into it about cultural appropriation, and the people that were saying you can't have these certain hairstyles, and there are other people online saying you can't eat these certain foods because it's cultural appropriation, you're stealing it from these cultures. Show me the data, show me the analysis, the population analysis you've done, and the Native American people don't want you wearing their hairstyles. Because the only Native American people I've spent time with, and I've spent time with like quite a few, have been grateful for other people to share their culture. And I know it's not going to be homogenous, I know there's going to be disagreement, but I am very, very skeptical and dubious of the people that believe that they can speak for a whole race of people, when the only people I've seen be offended by it are privileged, in the sense of, like, you know, they have a great fucking life, people in America or in you know, first world countries at least. So I would be very careful, if you want to engage in these kinds of discussions, not to let them get the upper hand and say that they're arguing against oppression, which means you're kind of arguing for oppression. They're arguing for compassion, which means you're arguing against compassion. And say, no, prove to me that you're actually doing what you're saying you're doing, and you're not just pulling a fast one. So yeah, I just wanted to show you this, first of all because it's so funny and it's just so good. There are loads and loads of other funny articles that they wrote. I might try and find the whole list of them and put them in the description. But secondly, because I still believe, even though these kind of subjects have been spoken about a lot, that the momentum that the radical left doctrines have is still very real, and there needs to be a hell of a lot more pushback against that. So another two examples of papers that were published. One is that the hypothesis was that if any guy masturbates whilst thinking about a girl without said girl's consent, then that was considered to be rape. This was published. So, I mean, out of all the definitions that the radical left doctrines like to stretch, I would say rape is probably the one that you really, really don't want to stretch. You want to save that one for genuine cases of rape. And it's just insanity that people could want to put this in a genuine academic journal. Another one that is just kind of funny is that it was a sign of internalized transphobia if a guy refused to use the kind of sex toys that gay people would like to use. It was either transphobia or homophobia, actually. It might be homophobia. So basically, if a guy doesn't want to like masturbate with a butt plug, then he's considered something phobic, whatever buzzword they threw out. And that was also yeah, that'll do. Peer reviewed that one, whatever that means, in the gender studies sphere. So there are a bunch of other examples if you guys want to go look them up yourselves, but I thought they were the funniest ones worth mentioning. And I don't know, man, even like a couple of days after I've seen it now, it's still just absolutely astonishing to me. And I hope that people spend some time thinking about what that means, that these things actually got published in academic journals. Imagine if we had the same kind of rigorous testing for like physics or something. Imagine how much the world would just go to shit, but for some reason we're allowed to do it within the social sciences. Alright,